This is your host, Stephen Sargeant, the Around the Coin podcast. We finally have an episode that's not talking about crypto wallets. Just joking. Of course, we're talking about crypto wallets, and today's a special day because we have Jamie, the CMO of Bitget Wallet, who goes deep into everything marketing, but also a lot of the technicalities around the Bitget Wallet and the infrastructure it's building around the world. We get into things like TVL. We get into dedicated crypto innovation and balancing investor protection and compliance. We talk a lot about the different jurisdictions like Asia and EU and how the Bitget wallet is being used around the world. This is a really interesting conversation. Jamie comes from an exciting background of sports and analytics, and he's bringing all that knowledge to the Web3 space. So this is a fantastic episode to learn all about crypto wallets, but to get a better idea of how it integrates in some of the biggest infrastructure in Web3, reach out to Jamie. He poses a little bit of a challenge at the end of this episode for anyone that wants to take him up on it. Reach out. Let us know what you think of this episode. We'll talk soon. This is your host, Stephen Sargeant, the Around the Coin podcast. In continuation with the podcast's amazing focus on everything to do with wallets and wallet infrastructure, especially around stablecoins and crypto payments going all the way around the world, we have Jamie from Bitget Wallet. Jamie, do a little light introduction, maybe how you got into crypto, and then I'm going to dive deep into the marketing aspects. You're the CMO. I'm a marketing person myself, so I think we're going to have a fun conversation on how we can approach marketing in Web3.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, thank you very much for the invitation today. It's a pleasure to be here with you on this podcast. I've seen and heard lots of tremendous things. You've had some great guests, so it's an honor to be amongst them. So thank you very much for the opportunity. So hello to everybody that's listening. Hello to Stephen. My name is Jamie Elkaleh. You can hear by my accent, of course, that is a thick Northern English accent, but I'm currently stationed here in Dubai. Now, my journey into the Web3 space is quite unconventional, to say the least. And it actually began in professional sports. Now, from the age of 16, I worked in professional sports for 11 years as a performance coach, performance analyst, pretty much doing everything you can imagine alongside professional squads from the age of 16, which was just crazy. But actually, it ended up in a really high-level position job within the industry, which was pretty insane from a young kid who's just kind of trying to earn his stripes. So that took me on many paths, all the way up to Super League, which, of course, in rugby league is the top division, the top competition in the UK. And I had the honour of working at Warrington Wolves, Salford Red Devils, Hull Kingston Rovers, and then eventually the England national squad, which was insane. So for that, of course, there's lots of different dynamics, lots of different attitudes that basically taught me a lot about life as a man, as a human being, but also about kind of like how to make best of situations from a data point of view and from a relationships point of view. And I think when you think about marketing, a lot come back to that very often in terms of the way you communicate. But then my journey into the Web3 space is a little bit different. I was getting married. It was very expensive. I think all weddings are, right? You always think, blimey, what am I spending all this money on? And I just thought there's got to be something different with money here. And I actually spoke to my wife, and every penny mattered then. Even though I was working in professional sport, it's an average wage. This isn't soccer or football, wherever you're from in the world, however you call it. This is rugby league in the north of England. It's not like Hollywood standards. This is rough and ready. Everybody's kind of getting paid a decent wage, enough to live and have a nice life. That's it. There's no way you can just afford a wedding straight up. So I was thinking, I need something a little bit more. So this is where I started looking at alternatives, like stocks and shares. Now, the story gets a little bit different there, Stephen. I'm going to get to the end point here. I actually, just before COVID, got a job with Manchester City. And as part of that, we got gifted some shares.
Was that like the pinnacle for you? Well, I have to ask. Was that like the pinnacle? Like we all think of like when we're younger and the dream jobs. Was that like a kind of like a dream job for you? Or was it like just a natural progression based on the experience you had at the top of like the rugby leagues?
That's a great question. I think if it was Manchester United, I'd have probably, and that's maybe just the competitive side of me there. If it was Manchester United, then maybe. I think it was maybe more of a natural progression, but also an opportunity that I didn't want to kind of let go at the time. It was just a great opportunity, and I'm always one that you should always jump at things that you get the chance to do, right? So for me, it was something a little bit different. Obviously, football, I've got to be honest, a secret between me and you now, Stephen, is I don't even know most of the rules around football. I'm a rugby league man, so it was just a bit of a strange coincidence. But anyway, I got the stocks and shares, and frankly, I was thinking, what is this thing, and why am I basically celebrating 4 or 5% gains in a day? This is not exciting at all. I need something extra. And then actually, this is where it gets really cool. My next door neighbor, she was a 60-year-old woman, was talking to me as I was putting the bin out, and she goes, Jamie, you need to look at this thing called Bitcoin and crypto. So I was thinking, this lady's crazy. Like, what are you talking about? I went back in the house, went straight on TikTok, as I think all younger people do. Back then, I was much younger, and I had a look. And the same night, I went and knocked on a door with a pen and paper, took all my notes, said, tell me everything you know, and then fell in love with the space, and pretty much the rest is history. So went and started trading crypto, decided to actually document my journey. So I became a content creator over on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. People followed me on that journey, trading from £200 all the way down, all the way up. And we had some fun with that. But as part of that, became like a marketer, created my own marketing company, got to work with the likes of Binance. It was tremendous. It was a great journey that, helped me. I mean, back then, you talk about content creators. Back then, there were nowhere near as many people making content back then. I think in the UK, there was like 3 or 4 of us, consistently making content about Web3 services or the crypto space. And for me, it's always been about education. It's not always been about shilling projects and getting onto things. It's about, hey, this is what I'm doing. I think it's quite cool. Come and check it out. So, yeah, a little bit unconventional, Stephen, but that's my journey. And I guess that's what brought me into marketing and then to here at Bitget Wallet.
I love that. What kind of rugby? Because I know there's like 2 kinds of rugbies where it's like the guys with the white suits that like point when you kick it through the uprights, and then there's like the other kind of rugby where you like dive for tries. Which are those 2 different types of rugbies? And I've seen both on TV.
Yeah. I think, obviously, in America and Canada, you have like American football. I was going to call it Aussie football. American football. That's pretty similar to rugby, but you just pass the ball backwards. It's the same. Yeah. No pads, no gear, no shields, just a mouth guard, and then you play rugby. You tackle each other and you pass the ball backwards. It's quite fun.
I love it. What kind of metrics were you looking, especially as a marketer now? I'm sure KPIs and metrics is a huge thing. What kind of metrics were you analyzing back then when it came to like the rugby athletes and other sports athletes?
Yeah, so you'd look at many things, honestly. And let me break it down into a few different components because, in any walk of life, it's now become apparent why we did things in rugby that are actually transferable, into marketing a great wallet. We'd always look at what we do well. You're only as good as your strengths, but you're actually only as good as your weaknesses. So keeping a constant eye on your data metrics, your key skill sets as to how you perform day to day, second to second, minute to minute. So when I was talking to players, we're talking about how do you attack off your left foot, your right foot, how do you tackle, how do you pass the ball? It's the same in Web3. How fast are we processing trades? How quick are we getting partnerships? How many users are getting onboarded? How we're onboarding those users? Where in the world are we onboarding them? It's very similar in terms of the methodology. But where it gets super, super interesting from a marketing perspective is how we used to analyze the opposition. And I think analyzing and understanding the landscape of your opposition, that has to be your biggest asset as a marketer. If you're all about creativity and storytelling and creating your niche and fully understanding your brand, it brings me back to my rugby days. Say, for example, we're at Hull Kingston Rovers. We're playing Warrington Wolves, which is another huge team over in England. We know how we need to position ourselves or prepare that week for a win, to get that ultimate execution. It's the same at Bitget Wallet. We know what we particularly do well. We know what services that users want because we listen to them. We know how to interact with them and we know how to position ourselves against our competitors. When you get to that level and you understand your strengths, your weaknesses, and where you kind of lie within the competitive landscape of wallets, for me, you get that marketing success and you're super clear with your vision.
And before we jump into Bitget Wallet, you were actually the country manager at Bitget. What made, to your point about like advantages and competitive advantages and weakness, there's so many crypto exchanges out there. Can you let us know a little bit about where Bitget positions itself currently in the market and how they were able to get traction? at the time, I'm assuming they came out very similar to the times of like Binance and Bitfinex. I was at Bitfinex for 5 years. I remember when BitGet kind of like came onto the scene. I'd love to know your thoughts about where BitGet positions itself in the market.
Yeah, it's really interesting. When I started BitGet, they weren't even in the top 10 when it comes to like crypto organizations or exchanges. And I think what became apparent was listening to users' needs at the very ground level. And what do I mean by the ground level? Like in the communities, living, breathing, eating with the people that are using the services. If I was to summarize kind of BitGet and BitGet Wallet, it's representative of the people that use it. It understands the user's needs and understands actually, frankly, security matters more than most. So security, accessibility is crucial. Let me just quickly talk. We'll probably talk about this later on, but the perfect example of that. And it circles into wallets. No, it starts off, let's go back maybe 6-7 years. People, frankly, just wanted access to DeFi services. But it was incredibly complex. If you wanted to bridge, good luck. If you wanted to get involved, you probably had to read 16 books and 25 YouTube videos to even consider getting involved. So this was kind of like the birthplace and where you saw a lot of centralized exchanges really boom, take off and rocket. And the reason they did that was because they made something that was super complex very easy for users to come and interact with for the first time. Now, we talk about custody, that's another conversation. If you talk about centralized exchanges in its purest form, they create a resource or a bank for users to, frankly, be able to trade in a very sophisticated way, where just clicking a few buttons, being able to execute it perfectly. Now, where BitGet, I believe, became a thought leader was understanding this process and principle super early and introducing UEX. Now, UEX is a hybrid between DeFi services, of course, and then centralized services, bringing everything on chain. Now, when you do bring everything on chain, it sounds very cliche, very out there, but what it means, if you can take those DeFi services and make it feel centralized from an accessibility point of view, you get to where wallets are performing to now. And in my opinion, wallets are no longer just wallets. They are that central hub for users to come and transfer assets. So if you want to put a bridge between a token on Ethereum to Solana or BNB, why should you have to go and do 6 or 7 different transactions and wait half an hour? It should literally be 2 or 3 clicks. You should be waiting 1 to 2 minutes maximum, and it executes almost instantly. It's the same with one of the processes we put together called GetGas. Try selling an Ethereum token when you've got no ETH. It's impossible. So BitGet recognized this super, super early. We introduced GetGas. GetGas gives you the ability to pay your gas fees in USDT, for example. It's unknown within the industry. So this hybrid model where we get to, I think BitGet did a tremendous, tremendous job with BitGet Wallet of recognizing this, understanding the user's needs, and actually kind of shaping the future of the way in which the markets are starting to lead to.
And I think if you think of it as a new user, the less different applications you go to, the less places you have to connect your wallet leads, that attack vector that we see hackers go after starts to minimize because you're staying in one ecosystem, and I'm assuming doing everything via your BitGet wallet. But Coinbase, Kraken were coming out with their wallet. It was at the kind of gap you saw, is that there wasn't this kind of connectivity into DeFi and the ability to do everything from one wallet. Is that why BitGet came out with their own wallet service?
I mean, yes and no. I think that the ability, BitGet, I would challenge anybody. I know you've had other wallet guests on who do a tremendous job. And just actually 2 days ago, I was over in India with the COO of Trust Wallet, and we were having a great fun and great laugh. And it was competitive, but fun in terms of the communication style. But I would challenge anybody in the space to come at us at BitGet Wallet and say that they provide more from a user's point of view, whether that be insights, connectivity to different ecosystems and chains, products, and frankly, the ability to now earn on balance. And I really want to touch on this, Stephen, because this shapes the future, and we're really super bullish in 2026 on payment and earn. And the reason that we are is this is where our niche is. Every wallet you can go and trade assets. You can go and trade across over 130 chains on ours. Matter of clicks, not an issue. Perfect. We've already summarized that very well with the example earlier. But where it gets super cool is the ability to pay and earn. Now, I'll break them down if that's okay, if I've got time to quickly go over that.
Yeah, I think everyone listening is like, how can I make money? How can we make extra money? Everyone's like, please, Stephen, let him go on. Let him go on.
Let me start with earn then. I was going to go with pay, but let's go with earn. Now, when you actually hold Web3 assets, digital assets, the days of just having them sat there doing nothing, earning money, it's not there. If you were to have it in your bank account, you may be getting a mere small percentage over a long period of time, and you're probably just waiting. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. I think very often in the Web3 space, we villainize or we talk really poorly around traditional services when actually we can learn an awful lot from them. And we definitely did with this service. So right now in our wallet, you can go and you can stake your stable coins. And by staking those stable coins, you can earn up to 18% APY. And that is in association with Aave. And it's a fantastic initiative. But it gets cooler. The days of staking and locking it up for days, weeks, months, or even years, they're a thing of the past too, Stephen. For us, we really wanted to gamify this and show users you can actually earn in real time. So if you want to go and put like $2 or $5 or $10,000 in there right now, and you can stake it, but 10%, I think, or 18%, dependent on the campaign, do go and check them out. It changes all the time, but the minimum you're going to get is 10% on your stable coins. You can actually earn in real time and withdraw it at any time. So the ability to then pull that away, watch it grow, it's super flexible when it comes to the user's needs. So that earnability is absolutely huge. And then when you couple that up with our pay plans, the payment is something that I absolutely love. And I'll talk about like a personal reason for that at the end, if that's okay. But the reason that I love it is the connectivity to people. There's two ways right now that you can pay in your Bitget wallet using crypto directly in the real world, and it's super exciting. Now, if you're in Europe, LATAM, or APAC, you can simply go and get your Bitget wallet card in association with MasterCard. Now, in Europe alone, that gives you access to 150 million merchants. You can go and spend that in 150 million places. Incredible. But you can actually go and spend that right now at 0%. We've got a 0% fee for spending USDT and USDC in Europe, which is just insane. But it does actually get much cooler. If you look at the likes of Brazil, now they've got a government rolled out system called Pix. If you go shopping and you want to buy some groceries, you scan a QR code and you pay traditionally from your bank account for that, groceries, whatever you've bought, milk, bread, whatever it may be. Well, now we integrated into it. The reason that we integrate into it is we understand that where users have needs, we need to come to those needs. We've done the same in Vietnam, we've done the same in Philippines, and we have plans to do it in many other areas around the world. Now, while we're on that topic of around the world, you can tell maybe by my surname, it's not an English surname. I'm super proud of my heritage. My mum is English, but my father is Egyptian. And my grandmother is from an area of the world, like it's quite remote, and some of our family members don't have access to any form of traditional services. And I mean by that is bank accounts. Now, what Web3 World does is it gives people access to financial services that, frankly, they never had access to before. This is where it gets super, super, super cool. So in the example of my family in rural part of Cairo in Egypt, they now not only have the ability to earn, because they never could do that in a traditional setting from a banking setting, but they now also have the ability to access the World Wide Web. And that maybe sound crazy in 2025, but actually in the example that I've used very often with my grandmother, if she needed medical supplies from Amazon, for the first time, she can go and use the Bitget wallet card and she can order it, opening up a whole new world for her everyday life. So it's much more than just your sophisticated Web3 user. This actually services the need, of billions of people around the world in a very creative way.
And I think if those Vietnam, Brazil, Philippines, when you look at the Chainalysis, grass adoption report or their, geography index report, those are like the top 3 countries around the world that have this grassroots adoption of crypto. And I'm assuming that stablecoins is probably driving a lot of that traffic. You mentioned earning and staking. I'm assuming stablecoins has a lot to do with that, especially if you can earn on top of those stablecoins that you have in your possession.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the people understand, everyday people understand the need for stablecoins. We can go and transact, we can pay, we can earn. But in some of the countries we're talking about here, you talk about their native currency. It's the same in Turkey, by the way, Venezuela. It's so, so volatile. I met the one person in Turkey once. He was a retired fireman from the UK. He moved out to Turkey to retire. He put his whole pension in a Turkish bank. And in the space of 3 years, it was worth a quarter of its value if you moved back to the UK. That's just down to the native currency. Now you give people a chance to have change, and that change may be holding a foreign currency for the first time. My grandma, my family in Egypt, they don't have access to hold US dollars for the first time, stable coin, for example. years ago. Now they do, and they can beat local inflation. They can not only beat it, they can now earn on it by using a product that's fair and free for all.
And I'm curious, where do you see the inflows going, or the outflows? Is it Europe to Asia, Europe to LATAM? Like, where do you see some of this high volume of transactions and flows going using the Bitget wallet?
I mean, it's a really great question, and I think this probably brings me on to one of the most beautiful points within the wallet. Of course, being self-custody wallet, we don't actually know fully the presets of our users. They can be anywhere in the world, frankly. This is the beautiful thing about being on chain. You're on chain, you keep your anonymity, you're totally independent from the world, but actually you get access to fair and free finance. If I was to talk from like a social perspective, because this is where we can get the metrics on social media and some other forms of campaigns, we can clearly see across APAC, across Africa and LATAM, there's an influx of users now using our services for the first time. And we welcome that with open arms.
And I'm curious now, regulatory wise, you've mentioned a lot of jurisdictions. Many of those jurisdictions, you're in Dubai. I know VARA, ADGM, you guys have a lot of regulatory clarity. A lot of that now is transpiring in the US and even in Canada, where I'm based. What are some of the regulatory obligations? Because it is a self custody service, what are some of the regulatory obligations the wallet has? And how do you deal with some of those cross border, or what we call the sunrise issue, where travel rule in some areas, harsh regulations in others, and the lack of any regulations in certain jurisdictions?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, there isn't a kind of like a one size fits all category when it comes to this kind of thing. We respect every single bit of local regulations and legislation on the ground, and we tailor our approach accordingly, whether that be marketing or access when it comes to some of our services. Maybe brings me on to a separate point that I do want to touch on within regulations. And I actually brought this up in India. I think that some governments, some agencies around the world, they do a tremendous job of supporting organizations like ourselves. And supporting is the key word here, because very often it's interpreted as enforcement strategies or bullying. Look, it's not like that. Let's be super clear. The majority of instances, it's a support mechanism, actually how we can benefit them as a country. And I think in India, I came off the stage the other day, and the first person that shook my hand was a member of the local parliament. Said, "Thank you very much. I want to learn more about the Web3 space because I need to be informed on what you just talked about." And they're not saying that from a place of, hey, I need to stamp the foot down. I need to kind of create some law to make your life hell. It's genuinely because they see from the way in which we talk, not just the positivity and everything like this, actually from a technological point of view, this is the future of finance. And if they don't embrace it quickly and understand it, they're going to get left behind. And the sooner they do that, the better.
And what is it? Do you see a huge knowledge gap when you go into certain countries where the regulators just don't understand the technology, or the technology is evolving every day? And I think if you went to conferences over the last 5 years, there's so many buzzwords. There's so many. We're going to do this, and we've done this. That it's hard for regulators to keep up with what is hype and what is actually being built, in the scene. How do you look at the regulators and how they're dealing with trying to create regulation that's not going to be expired by the time the pen ink dries?
Yeah, I think that is a great question, by the way. And I think a lot of the issues that come from a regulator's point of view, they come from traditional standards. My reference to that is the majority of issues come from the Web 2 traditional banking sense, and the attitudes towards it. I would say nobody's ever closed off fully to Web 3, because I think in 2025 or 2026, you are absolutely crazy if you just go crypto, I'm switched off to that thing. Because if you hear it, whether it's Donald Trump, whether it's something on social media, you can't miss it these days. It's somewhere, you'll have seen it or heard of somebody talking about it in some concept. So I think the door is well and truly open. Whether you think that's a good or bad thing that Trump and these guys are involved in it, that's one thing I'll do. But it does bring awareness to the space for good people like ourselves to hopefully help inform people. Let me give you an example. If we were to go to some areas of the world or some countries within Africa, their attitudes to the freedom of finance or access to finance would be very different to, say, somebody right now in the UK. And it's very different because, frankly, their current access in a traditional Web 2 setting looks very different. And I mean by that, it's all around services, whether that be insurance, the ability to actually earn on your balance, because for a lot of people, The bank is under the mattress. Around the world, they're stacking cash. That's the access that they've got to a bank. That's it. They don't trust the local
Rightfully
banks.
so, because they don't trust the value of their own currency and they don't trust the government that they're situated in as well. So, when you've been burned enough times, like you look at places like Greece and Venezuela and, Argentina with the hyperinflation, you have to kind of understand why people have their money under their mattress at those times.
100%, 100%. For me, it's super interesting. Like I say, we talk about regulations, we talk about regulators. I would say they're always warm. The key standout points that I would say is the questions that they ask. And I think that the angle of which they majority of the time do come from, it's from a caring place. It's from a lack of understanding. Listen, we talk about financial education. I'm from the UK. I went to school in the UK. The UK schooling system did not set me up for the majority of life, whether that be paying tax, access to banking, anything like that. Basically I came out half useless, and probably if you spoke to some people, they would still say that I am semi-useless, which is fine. But there's a really serious point around this. I think governments now for the first time are looking to implement some form of blockchain education into curriculum, and this is definitely happening in the UK, and they're looking around AI technology within that. And I think the moment when we get to this level, we talk about regulations being two ways. Enforcement is not the port, it's more support. Well, actually, we can support as an industry. We can provide great educational resources, things like this podcast. We can provide actual time and energy to people that are willing to learn for the first time in a really consumable way. You talked about earlier using these crazy big words, coming and making huge claims that just frankly put people off. Make crypto relatable. I was going to try and like trademark that phrase at one point. Trump's got his like make America great again. I just want to make crypto relatable because I think it's super important and it's the only way for us to grow. And I strongly believe that if we do this with regulators and they fully understand the concepts of which we're trying to roll out, none of us are trying to push one token. Let's be super clear on this. We're trying to push technology and we're trying to push on-chain data. And on-chain data is super important when it's used the right way.
I'm curious, what are some of the metrics you're a marketer? What are some of the metrics you follow? We've had a lot of L2 companies come on this podcast and they're talking, all of them have their grant programs and tokenization and airdrops. And it's like, those seem like very unsustainable methods to gain users or developers to build on your platform. What are the metrics that you hold dear? Obviously users is going to be important, but this is the activity of the users versus dormant accounts. Like, how do you measure success in your job?
Yeah, success is users not only coming and downloading the application, taking a look for the first time, but constantly using our services. We're actually a range of our services. So I think something we've done pretty poorly, and this is probably rare that somebody talks about this on a podcast, is actually showcase the capabilities of our application. If you were to go and download Bitget Wallet right now, we have kept it quite direct in the last 12 months when actually, if you go and play with our application, some of the user feedback, let's talk about meme coins. And meme coins, I think I love to talk about them because they're the gateway for the majority of people into the space. But we launched something called Meme Scan, and Meme Scan gives you the ability to, on Solana, for example, trade across all of its launch sites. And as you're trading across all of its launch sites, so you don't need to go to Pump Fund or any of these, you can do it directly in your Bitget wallet. It gives you live analytics. So it will scan the developer's contract or wallet address, and it will tell you how many tokens that they have issued in the past, how many of them have scammed or rugged or they've sold tokens on. And it will also give you key metrics around that token. So it'll be top holders percentages, the amount of sniping holdings, things like this. Now, this is really critical information that we provide as a wallet. And it's critical because actually it gives people choice and educational resource. Now, the point that I want to make around this is really that as a user, you need option, you need choice. Frankly, every wallet, you have access to every single token within the market. That's the beautiful thing about wallets. You integrate a chain, you can bring in the token, you can trade it openly on the markets. But users want to go to the place where they can get the best insights. Keeping things fresh, keeping users wanting to come back, it works. From a product perspective, you need to keep it fresh. You need to keep it fresh by listening to users on the ground, implementing the suggestions that they make, and making the services look like them. I think as an organization, as a team, we're very proud of the culture we've created. And we're very proud of that culture because, frankly, if you look internally, we're all users of Bitget Wallet. And I think that speaks a lot about the end product that users see. How can you build something if you don't truly understand it, and actually you're
Right.
building it for yourselves, right?
And I think what's interesting is just like when you buy a new car, like, you know the basic features, but if you don't know that, hey, if you press this button, it's going to unlock the traction control and you can fly off the line. Like, if people aren't teaching you the full potential and use of the wallet, it's kind of hard to expect users just to kind of figure it out on their own. So I think it's important you kind of go through some of the use cases. And to your point, a lot of that is just really education, where I think not a lot of people talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Education's key. I mean, even recently we rolled out Crypto 101. Crypto 101 is basically everything when it comes to using not just our wallet, any decentralized kind of finance tool, uh, breaking down everything. I don't know if you're familiar with our Crypto for Everyone campaign. We want to make sure that everything, all Web3 services are relatable and accessible for everybody. And we have a duty of care. We have a duty of care to users, whether you use Bitget Wallet or whether you use any of our competitors, to actually make you a more informed user. Because in the end of it, I'm pretty confident you're coming back to us.
I'm curious too. You talked a little bit about your family members and banking the unbanked. You've been in crypto. We've both been in crypto long enough to know that's been a narrative for a long time. But it doesn't seem like we're making any progress or really banking enough unbanked or underbanked people. What do you think of this concept? What's holding us back? Is it the UX? Is it the education? Is it like the regulations where you can only do so much because they don't have the proper IDs to onboard them on a crypto exchange? Because a lot of the crypto exchanges are treated just like banks. So it really leaves them in the same spot. What are your thoughts about banking the unbanked? Have we been making progress? What have you seen from the ground floor?
Yeah, I think it's actually been a really big cliche word that people use to make themselves sound busy until
Yeah.
recently. And that probably sounds quite critical, but it's the truth. I mean, just this week again, I was in India, and I was in India for the conference, the Indian Blockchain Week, which was great. But actually, we did something super cool. We launched a marketplace for users to now on ramp in association with USDT Marketplace. Now, that allows Indian users to basically use the Indian rupee to on ramp for the first time. By the way, at the lowest market rate. So we undercut everybody, which is awesome for the users, but actually it paints a whole ecosystem. And this is what was lacking in the past. Now, Indian users can on ramp, they can trade, they can pay, they can earn. And of course, then they can off ramp and hopefully, with their profits, enjoy something in the real world. Just last week, I was on literally, it's called Commercial Road. It's crazy, it's wild. I tweeted a video of me. I actually bought like 5-6 different people coffee. I was just wanting to try out the Bitget Wallet card. It's quite a fun video. Go and check it out on my Twitter. I bought them a coffee directly with my Web3 assets and they were blown away. But the reason I wanted to try it is because I thought, how cool is this? As somebody that's from Dubai, heading over to India, now I don't even need to take their native currency. I don't need to swap like hard cash. I can just take my crypto, take my literally on my phone, on my Apple Pay, scan it on devices and pay directly with crypto. And that for me is the future of finance. This is really making a difference. And frankly, I didn't need to do anything too crazy other than have a smart device. I think there's
Right.
another issue around that. You talk about banking the underbanked, and there are incentives or there are initiatives, which of course we are taking part in from a charitable aspect to give people access to finance for the first time. And we'll be making more announcements on that and doing more cool work all around the world, because very often people make the misconception that this is in kind of like society's deprived areas or countries. That realistically, there's even people in central London right now who don't have access to banks or are underbanked, that they can also be provided with services that we're talking about here.
And I was speaking to somebody yesterday, actually Joel from the Dash organization or DAO, and we talked about like 5% of the USA is underbanked or unbanked. Like we're talking about millions of people in probably one of the leading countries around the world, and they have 5% of their entire population is underbanked or unbanked, and that's just crazy to even think about. And you don't hear that enough in conversations. I'm curious. You just mentioned Twitter. Crypto seems to be going through a transition from like meme coin, degen to like, financial institutions and EFTs and, roundtables at the White House. I want to run a couple thoughts or statements across and hear your high level opinion.
Yeah,
One of the
sure.
thoughts is that the death of Twitter for organic growth. What are your thoughts on Twitter? crypto Twitter at least. What are your thoughts about organic growth on the platform? You seem to post a lot there as well.
Yeah, I mean, Twitter is an incredibly helpful tool when it comes to education and a voice. I think how you use that voice is critical. I think some people clearly often, they manipulate this or they twist the narrative. But I think that's down to the user. Users probably need to make more of a stand against this. They need to follow people that provide better insights and value to the wider space. For me, I'm super proud that Bitget Wallet, we create so much valuable content across all of our social media platforms, and we angle this in a specific way with education based at all times. Now, of course, if I was to put my content creator's hat on, I know for sure who I would follow and who I wouldn't. But if I was to give the users some advice, it's follow everyone. The more you follow, the more intel, the more information you can soak in, and you can make an informed decision. We always talk about do your own research, not financial advice. The best bit of research you can do or best bit of information you can get is follow everybody, be informed, draw your own conclusions, go and study, follow people that make you ask questions. And Twitter certainly does that. It's the freedom of expression, which is a good thing. I think it really is a good thing because it shows people, it shows organizations true values and what they stand for. But actually, it gives users choice, and that's what matters most.
You said you started creating content on TikTok. Are you surprised about the rise of TikTok and like these micro influencer ecosystems? I think we're going away from the millions of followers that were got, by doing trends and tricky little algorithm hacks. And I think there's a real push. And from a marketing, like who are you hiring when it comes to micro influencers, or who are you partnering with when it comes to a marketing, or even like more of a ecosystem play, like who's Bitget Wallet partnering with what blockchains, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, TikTok is an incredible tool, but actually it's the principle of TikTok that is the incredible tool. No matter which platform it's on, I think YouTube have done a great job with shorts as well. Frankly, the majority of people, I'm going to sound pretty offensive here, they're lazy. They want as much information as possible in a short period of time, and they're not prepared to get their hands dirty and basically consume whatever it takes to be able to make that happen, right? So TikTok, whether it be a 15, 20-second or 1 minute clip, now you can go and consume the same amount of content than you probably could have done in a 10 to 20 minute, video over on YouTube. Now, this is why TikTok was super successful. It wasn't people doing crazy dances and things like that. Frankly, if I want to learn how to fix something in my house, I'm quite lazy, so I'm heading over to TikTok. I'm figuring that thing out as soon as possible. It's the same with the news.
You're so right. I want the 45-second video. I don't need the 5 minutes of everyone explaining to me the tools. Like, give me the gist. Give me the one area that I'm struggling with, that we know that I'm struggling with when I have to jump my car or change my own oil.
But what I think this did, this mentality, it educated a lot of marketers, and it educated our brand significantly. What you say matters, and how you portray it matters more. Of course, you've got to present yourself well, you've got to speak well, etc., etc. But actually, the messaging is crucial. People just want to know, what is this thing? How does it benefit me? Why should I be connected to it? And keep it short and snappy. We very often talk about creating emotional attachment, storytelling, being creative. TikTok, you can do that in 15 seconds. So as a marketer, you need to stay fresh. You need to understand trends. You need to ride those trends hard. You need to understand the current market and understand your users' needs and push your brand accordingly. So for me, I think TikTok is an incredible asset. We, of course, work with hundreds, if not thousands, of short-form content creators. I think it's a super, super important part of the process. The reason we do that is we want users to tell their story. I think that's just as important as a brand. We have our narrative and we really want to push that across and portray that. But users' stories are just as valuable, if not more valuable, than our side.
Because they're going to say things in a way that you couldn't plan. Like, you can do all the messaging and the brand planning, but they're going to say things that are uniquely to their situation based on their jurisdiction, their age, their cultural, their societal norms. I think that's something that you can't plan in any campaign. That just comes out naturally, and it probably scales a lot more than you having this strategic narrative going out there to the world, is that they just say things or they use a certain slang that you're like, oh, I didn't even know that existed in that region. That's
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
interesting.
And it keeps me off
Uh,
TikTok because my wife actually told me it's embarrassing because now I'm a dad to have your dad on TikTok. So, stay off it, Jamie, and focus on what you do best and let other people do what they do best. And I'm a big believer in that now, or enforced
how
believer
are you
of
going to
that.
get your parenting tips if you're not on TikTok? I'm curious, does the central exchange to wallet conversion funnel still work? To your point, there wasn't a lot of, people diving into DeFi, so they had to go through that kind of centralized exchange, going to Bitget and Bitget opening them up to a whole new world of DeFi using their wallet. Does that funnel still work? Are they finding the wallet first before they even find Bitget? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the funnel absolutely works. And I think that, by the way, whether it be a BitGet wallet or a BitGet exchange or it could be a competitor, it doesn't matter. The process is the same. I think it's about providing people with opportunity, providing people with challenges. And I think those challenges are super important because challenges make users get educated. And what I mean by challenges is how we now overcome everyday IRL challenges. How am I buying my groceries? And that challenge now, it's not cash, it's not your MasterCard or your Visa card. You might be using your crypto card for the first time. As an exchange, I think that there's an argument, right, of course, around self custody and how you see that as a safe thing or not safe thing. That's you take the lid off that, you could talk about that all day long. But actually, the funnel is super creative and it's super important for the entire ecosystem. And it's super important because, traditionally to off ramp, you needed to use a central entity. You don't need to do that anymore. You can use a wallet. If you wanted to trade simply, traditionally, you would go to a centralized wallet. Well, you don't need to do that anymore. You can go to a wallet. So I actually think that there's room for both. There's room for many more options, by the way. You talk about Asta, Hyperliquid, all of these amazing ecosystems that are developing, and where they sit is super interesting, by the way. I think it's very close-minded that, the opinion of CeFi, DeFi, wallets, exchanges, to just say, no, we don't need them. Actually, the ecosystem needs a wide range of services because users aren't easy. Users are not simple. They're very complex. They have complex needs. You need to understand those needs. And frankly, if they enter the space for the first time and they keep coming back, the entire space wins. Now, how the future looks, it may be challenged and changed by regulations, and we have to wait and see how that plays out. And we look forward to seeing how that plays out. Of course, at BitGet Wallet, we take that very seriously. We've put great infrastructure and systems in place, such as our deposit protection scheme, which makes users have protected up to $300 million, with their assets if they interact with the BitGet Wallet service, which of course puts safety first. And this helps regulators, helps with users understand when you put the educational tools. And frankly, they can go and have fun with our systems,
Did you see that erosion? Like you just talked about safety and security, and especially with transactions. Did you see that erosion, obviously cascading from like FTX and Celsius, that erosion in trust in centralized exchanges where more people were moving to DeFi because they didn't trust? I feel like we've reverted back to that because of such services like what BitGet Wallet has. But did you see that trust erosion? And do you still think there's some residual when it comes to trust? You mentioned some of the APRs and the APYs for some of the staking services. That word yield, I think, still stings some people till to today with some PTSD. What are your thoughts about where we are in the trust in the industry, and more specifically when it comes to centralized exchanges?
Yeah, I think we always villainize our own space. I think, if there was no Web3 services or no crypto, there would still be crime, there'd still be theft, there'd still, frankly, be some awful people in the world. The argument of Web3 or crypto enabling that, I actually don't agree with. I think that we do a tremendous job of protecting users, and actually competitors talk. When there's a strange wallet, let's say, or a wallet that has been engaged in dangerous activity or illegal activity, we talk to each other and we make sure that those wallets don't have access to some of the services that we have. From a security point of view, we treat that super, super, super seriously. Of course, we've got our $300 million fund, but actually, from a technological point of view, we have full-time people, huge teams monitoring on-chain analytics and data, monitoring trends, making sure that we're on top of things, and frankly, making sure that the lights come on at the end of the day. And that's the super important part of everything. We talk about trust. Time is the biggest feeder of trust. We're 8 years old. That's a huge achievement as an organization for us to be getting to this point. We talk about regulations. Let's talk about FTX. FTX were one of the most regulated, signed off companies, not just in the Web3 space, in the financial sector. They almost bought a Swiss bank. What you can't escape is bad actors. And bad actors, they're in every industry, and they shouldn't tar a full industry because of one person or one group of people's bad actions. That would be my thought process on that.
What do you feel your responsibility is? Tether gets a lot of flack for contributing to money laundering. Obviously, when you're the biggest stablecoin, there's technically going to be a lot more crime using your token or using your stablecoin. What are your responsibilities as a self-custodian wallet, looking out into the ecosystem when you see something happening that really is outside of your purview as a wallet service provider, but you also want to protect the ecosystem? How far do you go into interacting with, as you said, some information sharing, whether it's illicit actors using wallets or using some of your partners? How far do you guys kind of look at, like, hey, we're responsible for this, or we can do our best efforts, but at the end of the day, it's a self-custodian wallet. We can only do so much.
I mean, from a legal perspective, in terms of like people breaking the law, users come first. Users' security and safety matters more than anything as an organization. Now, there is an element of we are a self-custodial wallet with open networks and open chains. Of course, there's going to be tokens that come on, but we have things called risk warnings, and we always notify users and educate users around risks of interacting with contracts and also with certain tokens. Within that, I think that we take our corporate responsibility super seriously, and I think we encourage users to go and educate themselves in the right way. I think as much as we take a lot on our hands, the users also get the brief from our side. Hey, you need to do your own research. You need to understand the tools that you're using, and we make sure we have the relevant pop-ups.
When you mentioned that meme scam, I'm like, that sounds really interesting because, like, you at the end of the day, it's very speculative industry when it comes to meme coins. But at least you can educate yourself. Like, hey, this is the risk you're running. You don't have to do much other. They're not going to do any more research than that anyway on the 90% of the time. But at least you let them know, like, hey, like, this is exactly what you're dealing with. Because at the end of the day, I don't think any of our jobs is to stop people. It's like saying, hey, what if we stop people investing in Tesla when everyone's saying the price was going to go down and they're going to go out of business? It's like, you can't stop people from making speculative or what they feel are legitimate investments, but you can educate them. And I think that's really all the industry can do.
Absolutely. And the super cool thing about that meme scam capability is, we've seen it live. I've been doing live streams where I've traded with some of our community and had fun. And you see them coming through. It said this person or this wallet address is connected to over 2,000 launches, like 1,900 of them scammed. Whereas if you were on another site, and I'm not going to name names, the launch site, this is not competitor, the launch site, you don't get these insights. You might have bought that token. You may have jumped in and not known, and then ultimately it's crashed down. So we give users choice. We educate them, and frankly, we encourage them to come back. And we encourage them to come back because, frankly, having those insights within seconds, because seconds matter when you're trading. It's the difference between getting in at a lower price or a higher price. It's instantly in front of you. You can make that decision in seconds and then auto buy or click the button, sell your purchase button. So, for example, if you're trading 0.5 Solana at a time, one click, you've bought it after looking at those insights. We've simplified everything to those kind of measures, which is super important from a user's perspective.
Yeah, it's a difference of are you or are you not exit liquidity. I think that is the difference at that time. As we end this podcast, I'm curious. At the start of last year, you wrote an article around some of the trends in 2025, stablecoins, real world asset tokenization, on-chain experience, the introduction of AI with DeFi. Can you share some of those high-level thoughts and how they progress throughout the year?
Yeah, I mean, this year, I think we have seen the stablecoin boom. And I think we've seen the stablecoin boom across every industry and sector that we've spoken about within that. You talk about real world assets. You now have the ability to trade on the open market 24/7. And that's an insane capability, possibility. Even this week, by the way, I've become an adult this week. I'm super proud of myself. My father messaged me, buy this stock. So I went and bought it using my crypto assets, which didn't please him too much. But actually, I found it super interesting because when he's saying that he's being halted on trading 212, I'm able to trade openly, take my profits while he's crying, waiting for the next morning to be able to execute his trade. I think that was super interesting. But bring me back to stablecoins. Stablecoins, the ability to transact openly free. Remittance is on the up. Remittance is on the up from a traditional payment point of view. Frankly, people are sending money internationally more than they ever have to certain areas of the world. Let's look at India, Pakistan. These countries are absolutely booming from a remittance point of view. I mean, just here in Dubai, over 60% of the population in this city are sending money back to India and Pakistan, and they're doing that via traditional methods. And those traditional methods are slow and they're costly. I think stablecoins and Web3 services, they beat both of those. It's instant and it's literally sent to be able to send them assets. You see local providers now in Dubai, they're now accepting crypto to send it to people in those countries. So they're almost trying to form wallets within the industry that they have within the Web2 sector. So it's super interesting, and I'm super bullish on that. I think something that we did talk about in the past was around the use of AI and AI agents. And we use that as an application, and we use it as an application to learn behaviors from our users. And what do I mean by that? You look at a lot of the on-chain data and social media infrastructure. When users are tweeting and talking about a project, and then you start to see a price action and price movement, that forms our hot picks. And every single day we'll tweet about them, we'll categorize that in the application. And I think we categorize very well. But this isn't just from on-chain data. This is from every part of the way in which we learn about our users interact within the Web3 space. Who's tweeting about it? Who's putting an Instagram story on it? Who's actually buying this? Who's telling their friends about it? Like, we can track this data because it's all on a publicly available, resource. That helps us provide our users with, in my opinion, outstanding insights for the very first time. And every single one of our competitors implemented this from the back of us doing it. And I think that it is a very good thing that we provided users.
I'm curious what your thoughts on, I produced a podcast with Chainalysis, and I believe it was Absolute Labs, and they were talking about this like wallet relation, like CRM, but like wallet relationship management, where it's like no longer emails and, phone numbers. You're using wallet addresses as a form to advertise. What are your thoughts around that? Obviously you are the wallet service provider, so you have a lot more, purview over the interactions that you see with your wallet services. But what are your thoughts about this revolution of like, hey, no longer are you going to have to worry about having this huge email contact list when you can airdrop people like about a new product or a service that might have an on-chain aspect to it?
Yeah, this is the future. I think we all know that the future is on-chain. The future is on-chain because it gives people the ability to scale as a resource, as a marketer, as an organization, but actually embed themselves and integrate themselves with ecosystems that are not afraid to hide from minor detail. There's a lot of governments, frankly, around the world that will benefit tremendously by spending people's money, their budget, on an open platform so that they're fully accountable for those spends. It's the same with organizations. If they're willing to communicate and market on an on-chain public database, for me, that's an organization that I would consider because they've got nothing to hide. They're promoting it openly. On the subject quickly of emails and social side, even last week, we integrated social login. Now users, they don't need a seed phrase. They can come on with their Google Mail account. They can open a wallet directly with it, and that's their full access to their crypto. We're breaking down barriers of entry. We talk about the use of email. We talk about breaking down Web 2. Actually, let's build with Web 2. Let's bring those users across, make it simpler than ever for them to come into the Web 3 space and interact with our services.
And I'm curious, what are you writing for in 20? You're probably preparing some notes for your 2026 edition of trends. What are some of the trends you're going to be writing about for, when you write your blog post for the start of 2026?
Yeah, all things pay, and I think all things breaking inflation. I see 2026 as an incredibly vital year for the world on many levels. We talk about macroeconomics and we talk about the way in which the world is moving. The world's been a bit of a frightening place in 2025, but I actually think that we've built a lot of infrastructure, not just as an industry, but wider afield to support people in better ways. I think we're learning more about users' behavior, and ultimately that behavior brings data. So I'm super bullish on data, and I'm super bullish on payment methods and the ability to earn. For me, that's going to shape 2026. As a wallet, the payment aspect is going to become huge in terms of our outlook and the way in which we position ourselves as an organization and brand. And we continue to develop products that matter for people at the right time. The way we do that is listening, understanding, and traveling, going to these places, experiences as a user. I'd never been to India before. I can tell you, I came back with 10, 15 ideas for the team. We're already looking at different possibilities and concepts. How can we improve ourselves as a wallet? And how can we improve ourselves in terms of payment methods via Web3 services in that jurisdiction? It's exactly the same. We're investing in people. We're growing our teams regionally. And I think being bullish on people for data, to bring me back to the data point, is super important. Having people on the ground, holding events and understanding users' needs.
And I'm curious. I think we create some content for someone that also just went to India. It was one of the FATF roundtables, and they were. I think it was called UbiPay, where it's like, hey, these merchants on the street are being able to tap. And I'm assuming you see something like that, and you're like, yeah, we can tap right into that. But what if the person doesn't have to go to a bank to get money to put on this card? What if they can do everything? What if they can get paid in crypto and then pay other farmers in crypto? I'm assuming those lights probably go off for you as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think you're reading my mind. I think, of course, we have to be super straight on this. We respect the local laws and regulations, but the possibilities are endless in the case of UBN. It was wonderful to see, from my perspective, as someone who's passionate about this form of technology. We can just flick a switch and we can make that baby work. We just need to figure out how to make it happen.
And I think you see it now and every day. Like, I was at my kid's Christmas market and, in the gym, they have all these vendors and it's like, well, nobody has cash anymore. And they're pulling out their Stripe card. It's like, yeah, that is the future. If you're going to a flea market or a farmer's market, you have to figure out easy ways to pay. It's not just for the convenience of the users. It's like, that's a lot of lost money on the table if you don't have a way to receive payment from people that really want your products and solutions. I'm curious, you're a content creator, I'm a content creator, but we also probably consume a lot of content that drives a lot of our ideas and creations. What is some of the content you're consuming now, whether that's books or podcasts or things that have just helped shape the way you've built the marketing plan there at Bitget Wallet?
Yep, so I am actually looking at Web2 brands. The perfect example right now is Christmas. Christmas is right around the corner. And the way in which they position themselves around product. So, as a British person, I'm always looking at Coca-Cola, Marks and Spencer's, John Lewis. Now, they do a wonderful job of connecting their products and services with people in an emotional way and sharing that capability or that emotional attachment to the brand. Now, let me bring this kind of like a parent to wallets. We know that Q1 next year, it's going to be challenging for people. Traditionally, it always is. The end of the financial year, they're looking for alternatives. They're looking for something different. Or maybe they've set themselves a new goal that they want to achieve something or try something different for the first time. Now, watching these examples and consuming that style of content, it teaches me an awful lot. And it teaches me an awful lot because I know that if I'm going to start positioning my brand and elevating it to those levels, I truly need to understand what users are consuming. Now, if I go back to myself and I'm looking at Christmas, I'm getting all excited. Woo, Christmas is coming. Fantastic. There's a much deeper value to the content that you create. And that content that you create is every year I'm waiting for those adverts. And I'm waiting for those adverts because I cannot wait to interact with those products and services. It's awesome to me. And the second bit of content that I'm always consuming is around sports. I think that's obviously because of my background. But actually, the data around sports right now is wonderful. You talk about like fantasy football and the ability to go and track players' performance and have fun with it. Now, why not can we bring that kind of mindset and thought process in terms of analysis of our on-chain behaviors in the future and have those conversations with our friends? I can go on WhatsApp right now. I can ping my friends. Wow, can you believe Mohamed Salah came on in the second half in the Liverpool game this week? He was pretty awful. He's been rated an 8. Well, why can I not go to them? Hey, I placed a trade last week. I can't believe how poor it was. I'd give myself this score. I think having that kind of banter, that attitude, that flexibility, I'm quite bullish on, to be honest. I think people are more open-minded to having that kind of criticism and thought process. And yeah, it's going to be interesting. But I'd say that is the style of content that I like to consume at the moment. It's very user-led. I think it's very user-focused. I think that's important. And I think it's important to learn a lot of lessons from.
A word of advice, like catalogs, they've really skipped out on the catalogs this year. We could barely find the catalog to cut out items for our kids' Christmas list. So if you can create a catalog of all the things that Bitget Wallet can buy, I think when you're thinking about these large institutions, the Coca-Colas and the Walmarts, and like there's they've gone away from catalogs. Maybe it's because I'm in Canada and we did have a postal strike. So don't bet the farm on my
Well,
catalog idea.
you're making them sound like they've gone cheap. They're not getting it printed anymore. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, it's either that or they're like, hey, we're not sending out 1 million catalogs when nobody's there to deliver them. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind as well. One last point, speaking to Joel Valenzuela from the Dash DAO yesterday, and he talked about stable coins. The hype is going to go away because whether it's a digital asset in stable coins, when inflation happens or when the value of the dollar that it's pegged on starts to devalue, like they're not going to be as attractive anymore, and people are going to look for other ways, to your point, of earning money on their crypto versus losing it due to inflation. What are your thoughts on that? Like the stable coin, although it helps with the transfer of payments, when the value of fiat dollars start going down, so will the value of these stable coins.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I think we're talking about, huge issues within the world around inflation, the way in which huge political figures are obviously impacting the wider world. I think very interestingly in the Web3 space, all of our, if not majority of our stable coins are pegged against the US dollar. It's going to be super fascinating in 2026. If various other currencies start to come apparent, in the UAE, will it be the digital dirham? In Great Britain, will it be the digital pound? The digital euro, for example, will that happen and what impact will that have? I mean, frankly, the issues of which you've just described, they vary country to country, they vary, continent to continent. How we bridge that is critical. No matter what, users still need the services that we've discussed today on this podcast. I think the tool in which they use to access those services, as a service provider, we will give them the best possible option. What that option is, nobody truly knows in the future, but we'll make sure we're placed with that.
And where's the best place to find you, Jamie? This has been an amazing conversation. We're going to tell people not to go to your TikTok so your wife doesn't get mad at you for sneaking on your TikTok when you see all these extra followers from the podcast. But where's the best place for people to reach out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm already private on TikTok and deleted that section of my life. So you can head on over to Twitter. It's just Elkaleh, so Elkaleh on Twitter. That's my surname. Or, of course, you can head on over to Bitget Wallet, drop us a follow, and you'll see my face, all of our content there, all of the time. But yeah, this has been a wonderful podcast, Stephen. Very free-flowing, very raw. I know very often you get questions, we brief them, we create bullet points. We ripped the script up today and we just went for it, and I've really appreciated this conversation.
It's funny, when I look at the incoming guests, we don't take a lot of CMOs or marketing professionals but I've listened to a couple of your interviews before, and I was like, yeah, like, although he's a marketer, just like me, it's educate. He's leading with education. And if people can come away with learning something, that's what marketing, in my opinion, truly is. They learn something and you buy yourself the opportunity for them to come back to you and learn something more, come back to you to use the tools or use the wallets. So that's really one of the few reasons why we don't have very many marketing professionals on the podcast and why I really wanted to have you on.
Oh, I appreciate that. That's super kind. And I'd also like to extend an offer to you. I would like to come to you, or you're more than welcome to come to me. We can figure that out. And I'd like to spend a day with you, and I'd like to show you exactly how, not just at Bitget Wallet, but how users can use crypto to surface their everyday needs. And I think that would make an awesome feature for you to have that experience, to maybe come away then without me on there, share with your users and your listeners exactly what we did, exactly how it worked, and give a real neutral kind of opinion back to users, because I think that you're the exact style of person who's open, honest, transparent, to really help us progress the way in which payments are seen and perceived within the Web3 space. So that's an open invitation.
I'm a fun hang because I nap a good portion of the day. I take a lot of naps. I need a lot of food. So I think I'm a pretty fun hang. But you're going to have to deal with the kids in the background. So definitely let's make that happen. Let's spend a day. Probably I prefer to come out to Dubai. Send the Bitget jet and we'll come out to Dubai.
Yeah, let's make it happen. Let's do that. That sounds great.
Awesome. Thanks, Jamie. Great conversation.
No, thank you very much for your time.